Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Repeat Ron, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a different video. This is going to be ranking weapons from worst to best with each class. I'm going to be doing a whole series of these videos. So the class we're going to start with is going to be Commando. Commando, because it has a pretty easy weapons tier list, I guess, to place, at least in my opinion. And then we'll be moving on to the other classes, doing them one at a time, and going over each of the weapons, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. And this isn't to discourage anybody from trying to use these weapons. I would very much encourage anybody to try using these weapons and making them effective. Let's start out with Commando and just go through them, and I'll be explaining my reasoning as to where they fall and if they are actually a good weapon or not. So starting off our list at the very bottom, we have the AR-15. This is the starting rifle, and it's not really that great. It's perfectly fine for the early waves. It does the job just fine there, but it just has so many weaknesses that the other assault rifles don't, that it couldn't really place any higher. It only weighs 4, which is really nice. That's a great weight for the assault rifle. It can fit with any other assault rifle or any other commando weapon. But where it falls down is it only has a 20 round magazine. It does okay damage per shot, starting out at 30 damage, and if you upgrade it, it actually scales pretty well up to 60 damage, which then it's not that bad per shot. But 20 round magazine in either 3 round burst or in semi-auto is just not as good as a full auto gun or a strictly semi-auto gun. It'd be great if this weapon could get buffed, either having more damage or having more ammo. Likely having more ammo would be better for it being a starting weapon. But usually most commandos ditch this weapon pretty early on, and I don't really blame them for it. Coming in at our 11th place is the Bullpup. This is the L85-82 Bullpup commando rifle, which has recently gotten buffed, which is good. It would have been at the bottom, but with this buff, it scores slightly higher than the AR-15. It weighs 5, which is actually a pretty good weight. You can take any of the other guns that Commando has with it, which is really where it scores well now. It has a 30 round magazine. It's full auto or semi-auto. It has an okay rate of fire. It starts out doing 32 damage a shot, and its upgrades honestly aren't way great. It does scale up better now. It almost goes to 60 damage per shot at fully upgraded, but then at a weight of 8 is just not going to compete with the other assault rifles. There's really not much to say about this gun. It's gotten better than what it was, but it used to just be the worst gun in Commando's arsenal, and now it's a reasonable gun to take with certain loadouts. It's not going to be better than quite a few of their options, but it will be alright. At number 10, we have the Tommy gun. And this is where weapons start actually having pretty good uses rather than having niche uses. The Tommy gun is a fantastic early game weapon because it has a large magazine and you get extra ammo for it, as well as it synergizes extremely well with any of the ammo related perks that Commando can take, so you can get even more value early on. It does 30 damage, just like the other guns that we've talked about, or the Bullpup doing slightly more. It weighs 6, so it does weigh more than the Bullpup, and you can't take it with every gun that Commando has. However, it does have a higher rate of fire than the other 2 guns that we've talked about so far, so it does have potentially more DPS, but the Tommy gun also scales worse than most of the assault rifles in this game. So the more upgrades you put into the Tommy gun, the less of a payoff it's going to be. It's not a terrible weapon to put upgrades into, but I rarely do. I usually just take it early on so that I can use up the ammo that I got and then sell it for a later weapon. It's another weapon that's okay in certain aspects, but not the best in most aspects. In 9th place for Commando, we have the Stoner. The Stoner is probably one of my favorite weapons in the game and probably my favorite Commando weapon. However, it's not always one of the best. It does have some limitations. It is fairly expensive at a tier 4 weapon, costing 1500 Dosh. It weighs 9, so it's very heavy and can only be taken with a few weapons that Commando has. It does hold a 75 round magazine. It's only full auto. This gun also only has 30 base damage per shot. It does have a pretty high rate of fire, so that's not so bad, and it doesn't have too much recoil, so it's pretty easy to hold on target. But just having less damage, and with its upgrade barely giving it any more damage, and taking it to 10 weight, which makes your options even more limited, it's not really the best gun for fighting anything large in the game. Now, this gun is fantastic at killing all sorts of small stuff, though. You can completely mow down hordes of small Zeds, and if you're only looking to do that job, then this gun is really good for that. If you want an all-around gun, though, This is much more of a specialized gun that isn't going to help you as much. In 8th place, we have the minigun. This is the Commando DLC weapon. This is sometimes regarded as a upgrade to the Stoner, but sometimes not. It has a 90 round magazine. It is only full auto, as you would imagine. It weighs 10, so your options in other perk related weapons are extremely limited. It does do 35 damage per shot, which is better than the Stoner, although with the Stoner's upgrade it's pretty comparable. It does have the highest rate of fire out of any weapon in the game, only being tied with the dual Glock 18s from Gunslinger and the Vector from SWAT. This gun actually does pretty well against everything. It can do well against big things. It can do well against small things. Its main limitation, though, is whenever you're firing it, you are slowed down. So if you're being focused, then this weapon is not going to be as good for you. This is also going to have to be paired with something like the Bullpup or the AR-15, which have already scored pretty low on the list. So your options are kind of limited, at least if you want to stay on perk. You could go off perk with this weapon. Alright, in 7th place we have the MKB-42 carbine rifle. This rifle is all around pretty decent. It does good damage, doing 50 damage per shot, which is pretty nice. It has a decent magazine size of 30. It can be fired in either full auto or semi-auto, which is kind of nice. Its sights aren't the best, but that's personal preference, so you might think that they're better than I do. It weighs 7. So it is one of the more heavy rifles, and it has a slow rate of fire compared to most of the other assault rifles. With upgrades, this gun actually scales pretty well, going up to, I believe, 70 damage when it's maxed upgraded, which is actually really good for a full auto gun that holds 30 rounds. Overall, this weapon is just kind of decent all the way around. If it weighed less, or if it had a higher rate of fire, or if it did more damage per shot, it would scale higher. But right now, it pretty much sits right in the middle of the list. As like the standard assault rifle. Alright, coming in at number 6 is the AK-12. So the AK-12 is a very interesting weapon. This fits right into the very middle of our list. The AK does high damage, at least to start with. It doesn't scale as well with damage. It has a pretty decent rate of fire in full auto, but if you switch it over to its burst fire, it nearly doubles in its rate of fire, making its DPS output actually really high, and it's really good for that. This weapon does have a bit of a problem with recoil, though. It is difficult to control in the early levels. Later levels, it's not so bad. It's pretty controllable then, once you have the recoil reduction. Not a big deal then. This weapon also weighs 6, if I didn't say that, so it fits into quite a few loadouts, and overall it's a pretty decent weapon. It's all around pretty solid. The only weaknesses it has are somewhat high recoil at lower levels and not really scaling that well with levels. Those are the only reasons why it is a little bit lower on this list than other entries. At number 5, we have the Scar H rifle. So the Scar H rifle is a tier 4 commando weapon. It weighs 6. It can either be full auto or semi-auto. It does have an optical sight on it. It holds a 20 round magazine, which is okay. 20 rounds is not the best, but with its pretty high damage at 55 damage a shot, and decent rate of fire. It has about the same rate of fire in both full auto and semi-auto, so you don't really miss out there. It also has very little recoil in it. And sitting at 6 weight makes it really nice to put with other weapons. It's one of the more versatile weapons that Commando has for putting into loadouts. If it had a larger magazine, it would score higher. Other than that, it's a fantastic weapon. It's great at pretty much everything. Its upgrade, honestly, isn't way great. It's not necessarily worth upgrading, but other than that, it's a pretty all-around solid weapon. Alright, so coming in at number 4, we've got the M16 M203 assault rifle. The M16 is a tier 3 weapon that is both for demo and for commando. It does 33 damage a shot. It holds a 30 round magazine as well as a single shot underbarrel grenade launcher. The grenade launcher does a total of 460 damage if you land the grenade onto a target and it explodes on it. This weapon also has a pretty high rate of fire. It also has really good iron sights, in my opinion, and it's extremely manageable with its recoil. It has very little recoil. This weapon is just an all-around very solid weapon to take on commando. There's really no downside to it. With upgrades, it doesn't scale as well as some of their other assault rifles, but it's still not bad by any means. It's all around just a pretty good assault rifle, and that's what lands it here at number 4. And now we're to the top 3 of our list with commando weapons. All 3 of these weapons could change places at any time. All of them are pretty strong. The first one that we're going to talk about in third place is the HM Tech 501 grenade rifle. This is a medic weapon, but it also crosses over with Commando's weapons. This is a tier 5 weapon. It weighs 8. It has a 30 round magazine as well as a 1-shot grenade launcher on the bottom of this, similar to the M16, except for this one shoots out healing grenades. This weapon does 47 damage a shot, has a pretty low rate of fire compared to the other guns, has some noticeable recoil to it as well, but simply being able to heal your allies and have the medic grenades to break up crowds and create safe spots for your team is generally worth the added weight. It's probably one of the best guns that Commando could be using because it does have the ability to heal the team, as well as it's a decent weapon for killing most things with it. In second place, we have the FN FAL ACOG. This is a sharpshooter weapon as well as a cross perk with Commando. It is a tier 4 weapon. It holds 20 rounds. It weighs 8. It does 70 damage a shot with its base. It upgrades pretty well with upgrades, doing even higher damage. And this weapon sheerly gets into number 2 just because of its raw power. This is the most powerful weapon for Commando. It has the highest damage. It has a pretty high rate of fire when it's in full auto, and a pretty low rate of fire when it's in semi-auto, but it's far more controllable. Downsides to this gun are that it only has a 20 round magazine. That can be an issue, as well as it has high recoil. So being higher leveled will definitely help with this weapon. This weapon has a few drawbacks, but it has a lot of pluses, mostly just in its sheer amount of damage and DPS that you can do with this weapon. So that's why it gets the number 2 spot. And then number 1, I'm sure plenty of you guys seen this coming. It's the HM Tech 401 Medic Assault Rifle. This is once again a cross perk weapon between Medic and Commando. This weighs 7. It holds a 40 round magazine. It's only full auto. Its secondary fire fires out healing darts like most of the medic weapons do, allowing you to heal your allies. It does 35 damage a shot, and with its 1 upgrade, it honestly doesn't get that much more damage from that. It has a high rate of fire, it has very low recoil, and it has pretty nice sights. All the way around, this is just probably the best weapon for the team that Commando can have. Being able to heal your allies, as well as just having an all-around solid gun, really just pushes this into number 1 place because it has so much utility as well as just decent overall stats. So tell me what you guys thought of this list. If you guys are looking forward to other lists like this in the future, they are pretty fun to make, and I'm sure there will be plenty of discussion down in the comments below depending on what your favorite weapons are or what your loadouts are. Most of Commando's weapons are honestly pretty solid, or at least fill some role. Besides the AR-15 and the bullpup being rather weak, all of the rest of the guns at least have some use, and I would say are pretty widely seen, at least throughout the community. So if you guys are new here and you haven't already, be sure that you're subscribed. That way you get notifications whenever I post anything live. And if you would like to help out the channel further, you can do that over at my merch store by buying merch, going over to the Patreon and donating. It's $1 a month and you get access to early videos that I post over there. I've been posting there pretty regularly now. And thank you guys so very much for watching this. I really do appreciate it, and I will talk to all of you guys next time. Till then, stay cool, and bye!